When I first met Brad in 2009, when he came to Finland, I saw that he's an asshole. I mean, a normal and really lovable asshole, because in my neighborhood and in my life, I love assholes.
Before you've even spoken to him, you have, you know, an image or an idea of how he's going to be or how he's going to act. Not sure if I'm making much sense here, but, you know, Brad's got a leather jacket on, he's got a pair of jeans, you know, which is not the man on the street's idea of what a Zen master would look like or certainly should dress like.
I've had people comment that they were sort of relieved that he was kind of a regular guy. Most of my friends are not looking for the guy in the robes who's floating off the ground.
Yeah. Alright, they do not want us walking in the middle of things, so we're just gonna hang around here till it gets to be, we're supposed to arrive there at 11:40.
Brad is a different brand, certainly. I don't want to compare Brad to the Dalai Lama. I mean, comparing anyone to the Dalai Lama is maybe not fair, but I think, you know, again, Brad has been doing this, he's been sitting, he's been practicing Zen a lot longer than I have, and I think you can clearly see the benefits of the practice in Brad.
The teacher I have is not very rule-oriented. You could have walked in late on one of his things, but some Zen places are kind of anal retentive. And this is one of the lineages which is anal retentive, and they don't want anybody walking in during the middle. They lock the doors and you can't walk in. As far as the matter of transference and responsibility, I feel that responsibility, and maybe you're not going to like this, goes both ways. I feel I am responsible to the person who comes to me for teaching or whatever, and I feel that they have a responsibility to me. It was the case where a woman who had come to 3 or 4 Dharma talks and then disappeared for months. And then I found her again, and we were both in the places where things happen, and I ended up having a relationship with her.
So I'm going to start with law professor part. I'm very careful not to appear to be developing special friendships with students.
I don't know, I got the impression that at least 2 of the people who were asking questions were having some kind of strong negative reactions to what I had said.
I mean, I think you might be unaware of how seriously your audience here takes a lot of the things that you're talking about, but I think that there's a difference between humor and levity and being flip, and I don't understand what you hope to gain by this sort of flippancy in relationship to, especially talking about the role of the teacher.
When it's too much of a love fest, it's also, it gets kind of boring.
I think there's anything about your relationship to your dad or your teacher that has you adopt the persona of a perpetual adolescent and everything.
This one's called Cropper Time. What is it about? Oh, it's about going to New York with your daddy's MasterCard and buying you those new $400 shoes. Wait. $4 shoes. Ready? Everybody ready? Barbara Dart! Fire!
All simple dwells in factory for taking the top of the way. What do you say? What do you do? Can you say fight never? It's a dream. It's a roll. Destruction like the black night left and brought away. What do you say? What do you do? Can you say fight never? It's a dream. It's a roll.
Your life is dukkha, no way to find joy.
20 years enough, all the same time, more than. What do you say? What do you do?
Feel beyond form and emptiness, wearing the Buddha's teachings, we free all beings.
Can you say fight different? It's a dream. It's a roll.
I got into Zen kind of by accident. I was a student at Kent State University. This is around the early 80s. I was 18 or 19 years old, and I was big fan of the Beatles at the time. And I'd lived in Kenya, in Africa, and been kind of exposed to Indian culture over there and the whole Hindu religion stuff. My dad had a best friend who was an Indian guy, and we'd go over to his house. And I remember seeing the pictures in the house of the four-armed Vishnu and all that kind of stuff. So somehow that got planted in my mind, and I was really searching for answers. And I thought, well, maybe Eastern religion is going to have the answers. So I was going through the catalog at Kent State University trying to find any class about any Eastern religion possible. And the only class I found was one called Zen Buddhism. So I signed up and went to that class. And the very first day, the teacher was this guy named Tim McCarthy, and he was a skinny, scrawny, white guy. Didn't look like a Zen master, didn't dress like a Zen master, didn't do any of that stuff. But he was very funny and very real. And I remember he went over this thing called the Heart Sutra, which is the main sutra in the Zen form of Buddhism. And it had a line right in the middle of the sutra that goes, "Form is emptiness, emptiness is form." And I remember thinking, that's right. I don't know what the fuck that means, but it's right. I can tell. And I was kind of hooked ever since. And I'd been interested in Japanese culture for a long time. I was interested in the Japanese monster movie culture, the Godzilla films and all that stuff, really deeply when I was a kid. And then I got into Zen, and I'd always kind of wanted to go to Japan. But my idea of going to Japan was, I didn't want to go there as a tourist and spend 2 weeks and get like a toe in the water in Japan. I wanted to actually, really experience it.
ドイツへ東洋の文化を西洋に伝えてもらう仕事を考えている。ああ、私はよく日本の文化をわかります。藤山、すき焼き、仮面ライダー、ゴジラ、ガメラ、キレイ。
So I got a job being an English teacher in Japan, and I did the English teaching thing for a year, and then ended up going to work for a company that made Japanese monster movies. I don't know, do people still watch Godzilla movies? Like that kind of stuff. We didn't make the Godzilla movies, but the same family who made the Godzilla movies were the people that owned the company I worked for, so we made the same type of stuff. We made a TV show called Ultraman. So I worked for this company. I'm still interested in Zen. I started going to see this teacher, this Japanese teacher there named Gudo Nishijima, and learned from him, and he actually ordained me as a monk, and I became a Zen monk.
Like this, and put...
You were already doing Zen?
Yeah, I was already doing Zen. The thing was that the Zen thing and the going to Japan thing were a bit disconnected. People always write to me and are constantly asking me this, should I run off to Japan to join a monastery and study Zen just like you did? And I tell them I didn't run off to Japan to join a monastery and study Zen. I went off to Japan because I was broke. Actually, my teacher had told me, my American teacher, Tim McCarthy, had told me he'd never been to Japan, still hasn't as far as I know. But people he knew who'd gone over for Zen had been deeply disappointed because they're, right off the top of my head, I can only think of one temple in Japan where you could conceivably go over there and study Zen, and I think there's probably a waiting list to get into that one. And here was this old man who you'd sit zazen for half an hour in the style that I had been used to from Tim in Ohio, and then he gave this lecture. He would give these hour-long lectures on Shobo Genzo, which is this ancient Japanese thing written by Dogen in the 13th century, and he's a Japanese monk who wrote a lot of stuff. And Nishijima would lecture on those, and I would listen to those lectures, and I'd be like, this guy's full of shit. I didn't I didn't like him. He seemed to be very full of himself, very strong-willed, kind of egotistical, and which was funny to contrast with the number of people who were there sitting with him, which would be 5, maybe 7 people, and he'd be like holding court like he was Hitler or something, He'd gone through this process, this meditation process for 50 years or whatever by then, and he'd gathered some kind of understanding from it, and he was expressing that. And if you didn't have 50 years meditation practice behind you, I saw people try to argue with him, but he's talking about things that he's experienced, and you haven't experienced those things. So he'd be like, well, you have to sit another 20 years.
I describe Nishijima's students as the island of misfit toys. Remember from the old Rudolph special every Christmas? We were all these people who hit various glass ceilings in Zen. A lot of them came from Europe. They were in the Deshimaru lineage, and they had some political problems and difficulties with the approach there. They found a home with Nishijima. I had been doing Zazen for about 25 years, mostly living in Japan, and then there's no place for a layperson to go. And I started doing some translation work with Nishijima, and I found a home there. Brad is Brad. There are so many different folks who are committed to the Zen world, and we wouldn't have a place to, put our ship. And he gave us a port to call home. That's Nishijima.
If I'm just a beginning student and I find a book about Buddhism, how do I know if that book about Buddhism is true or not?
So that is our experience of daily life. So we should test some theory is true or not in our daily life.
And this is the only way to know if it's actually true or not.
Yes. Therefore, we have to practice that every day, and keeping the balanced state of autonomic nervous system, and then we think about the Buddhist philosophical theory, and then we can select the true Buddhism one by one in our daily life.
The difference between Guido Nishijima and Brad, of course, Nishijima is much more traditional in a way, but on the other way, Nishijima is not so traditional like Brad. I think they both are sharing the same style in a way. I mean, both are like kind of rebels in their own society, in the Zen scene. And they both are expressing their own unique wisdom, not just copycatting other talks, but maybe the main difference between Nishijima and Brad is that Nishijima is Japanese and Brad is not Japanese, and the Japanese culture is Nishijima's thing in a way, because Nishijima is filtering his teachings through his culture. I mean, well, I don't know. Now I think I'm just talking bullshit, but actually, I really don't know if they have any differences.
Who believes everything she hears.
Punk rock and Zen are connected sort of through me, I feel. I mean, I don't mean to say that I'm the only one, but for me, punk rock and Zen are connected through me. I got into punk rock and Zen for pretty much the same reasons. You know, when I was younger, I was searching for something authentic and true, and rock music seemed to be the best way into that.
It's me, and it's time for another band number from our band, Dementia 13.
I was in high school in a small town in Ohio, so it took a long time for punk rock to kind of infiltrate that area. And when I first heard it, it was a huge revelation. I remember watching Devo on Saturday Night Live, and I don't know exactly what year that was, but seeing that really sparked something, because they were, I mean, Devo is sort of only tangentially punk, but they're certainly part of that whole, you know, movement within music, and it was something cool, and it was something very definitely rock music. You know, it had a beat, and you know, it had energy to it, and these people were nerds, and they were local. You know, they were Akron people, and they didn't sing with that sort of fake imitation Robert Plant macho voice, you know. So it was something I could relate to, and it was authentic. You know, it was saying something real. And so through a roundabout way, I started getting into the hardcore punk, and eventually joined Zero Defects as their bass player. And I was into that scene also because I thought this is authentic, this is true. And as punk rock went through that phase where it really lost a lot of its authenticity, because by the mid-'80s it was attracting a lot of sort of jocks and these people, the people who we were rebelling against in the first place, because they saw it as an opportunity to mix it up and have fights, you know. And at that point I felt like I'm done with this. I don't want to deal with it anymore. And it was around that time that I got more deeply into Zen, because I thought, okay, well, the punk rock thing disappointed me. Zen is going to be more authentic. And I feel like Zen is the ultimate punk rock in a way, because Zen takes all of the stuff that I saw punk rock doing and goes the full distance with it. For example, punk rock was very good about questioning society and questioning the sort of standard ideas we all have about how things should run, but it wasn't very good at questioning itself. It was sort of stopped at one level and said, okay, well, if you've got a mohawk and you have the right political views and so forth, you're okay. But Zen, as far as I could, my take on it was, it went even further than that. It said, well, just, what does it mean just having the right political outlook and all of this? Go deeper, go all the way into that. Who are you really at your core of your being, even beyond what your views are and that kind of thing. So that's the connection to me.
It's on. Fuck yeah!
That's the warmest reception you could give Randy. All right, that's very nice. Thanks for coming, Randy.
Got any traction, you might go.
Jesus.
It's like pure ice.
You guys want to push a little bit and see if I get up it?
Yeah, be careful.
All right. Don't get killed. Give her a little bit. Give us more.
I mean, it's one of these things you know about in Akron. I think there's a lot of connections, or a lot of connections, so much as similarities between the AA's approach and Zen's approach to things. It's my friend Randy Blythe from Lamb of God, who happens to be visiting in Akron to come and see the Zero Defects show.
Yes.
And to see all the sights of amazing Akron, Ohio. One of which is the grave site of Dr. Robert Smith, Dr. Bob, the founder of Alcoholics Anonymous. He was, like the city of Akron isn't famous for a lot of things, but one of the few things it's famous for is being the founding place of Alcoholics Anonymous. And since I've been doing the Buddhist teaching thing, I've run into a lot of people who are like 12-step program people and this and that, who got into Buddhism as a way of, one of the 12 steps is, I don't know if it's one of the steps, but you acknowledge a higher power, right? And people who aren't Christian or Jewish or kind of are looking for another sort of higher power to acknowledge. So sometimes they come to a Buddhist teacher, me or also Noah Levine is kind of known for this.
Yeah, he's well known.
For kind of dealing with that. And so I started reading up about it because I didn't know much about Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's really fascinating because, one of the really key points in Alcoholics Anonymous is to understand that the founder, Dr. Bob, was just a drunk. He was he was a known drunkard. And not some kind of superhuman guy or a deity or anything. So the idea being that if Dr. Bob could do it, then you can do it, and that's a key thing. And I find a lot in common with Buddhism because we have to. It's one of the things that I almost get sick of hearing it in Buddhism is like, Buddha was just an ordinary guy. He wasn't a deity. He wasn't a god. It's like a mantra, you have to repeat over and over. But it's not. We're not just saying that to say it or something. It's a key part of what makes Buddhism what it is the fact that Buddha himself was a guy who understood that he had problems and he wanted to figure out how to get free of those problems. He wasn't somebody who had some kind of supernatural power or great ability. He was a guy.
Without further ado, I just always want to say that. Brad Warner. This is my friend. Back in the old punk rock days, he used to crash over at my apartment with our buddies and stuff, and he has since become famous and world-renowned, and he's a writer, and he uses a writing process. And I thought it would be a good opportunity while he is in town to talk a little bit about what he does and the different levels there are of the writing process, but it is all essentially the same. So, take her away, man.
All right.
Have a seat over.
Good. All right, I'll tell you a little bit how I came to be a professional writer and all that. So I've been writing ever since high school, little short stories and bits and pieces and things. And I started writing stuff for the company because it was a film and television production company. So I'd write stories and submit them. And I had to write these stories in English and translate them into Japanese and then give them to the company. Along the lines, I decided I wanted to try to publish something. So I wrote novels. And I finished 3 complete novels just on my, I would wake up early in the morning and write like crazy and then go to work and then I'd come home and write some more. Wrote these novels, submitted them to publishers, and none of the publishers I submitted wanted my novels. So I still wanted to write, but I kind of
given up on getting anything published. And so I decided to just sit down and write out the story of how I ended up becoming a Zen monk who used to play in punk rock bands and was now making Japanese monster movies. I wrote this book and I looked at it and I went, nobody's going to publish this piece of shit because it's just, there's no market for books about punk rock and Zen and monster movies. So I submitted this book, and then suddenly I get this email from this publisher called Wisdom Publications that says not only do they want to publish my book, but they want to publish it really fast. They're like in a big hurry to publish this book. And I thought, that's weird, but you know, they like my book.
I found Hardcore Zen at the Bodhi Tree bookstore, and I looked at the back and it said he was a punk rock bass player, so I bought the book. And it was a signed copy, and it said something like, worship Satan.
Hardcore Zen is the first book that I read, and that's probably the best.
I like Hardcore Zen, the book. I reckon, because it was my entry point into the Zen practice. You know, at that point, I really didn't know what Zen was, really. And, you know, I think it was one of those, never judge a book by a cover. But in this case, I did. You know, it was on some kind of, I think it was Amazon, you know, if you've read this book, try this one. And Brad's book had come up, and I saw the cover and I thought, that looks pretty wacky. I'll have a bit of that. And then I bought that, and, you know, and it came along. And then, you know, I read through it once, read through it twice. Third time, I actually started to understand it a little bit. And, you know, at which point, then I started kind of, you know, trying the practice out.
I think I enjoyed reading it. I really liked his writing, and I really was tickled by the Ultraman.
Questions for Bradley. Because we're on film, I think we should do a drum circle thing. Ready? Start stamping your feet. Come on, everybody.
Tonight we have a pretty awesome guest in. We have Brad Warner. He's looking over his shoulder like, who came in? It's you, Brad, it's you.
They contacted me around, I think it was like 2004, and they wanted to know if I would write an article or articles every, I think they wanted weekly at that time, about spirituality. And I just thought that was such a hilarious idea, because at the time I had heard of Suicide Girls, but I'd never, you know, I'd never even looked at it or anything. I just knew it sort of existed out there. And I didn't know they had articles, you know, I just thought it was like porn.
I am so excited.
Welcome.
Brad is one of the most popular columnists on suicidegirls.com. And I just came from seeing Brad do a thing at the Bodhi Tree, and his talk was absolutely amazing.
I was talking about a book I just wrote called Sex, Sin, and Zen, which I've talked about on the Suicide Girls column a couple of times. And it's a book about sexuality and Buddhism, which are two great things that go great together.
Well, see, that's really interesting because, you know, the Buddhist monks are celibate.
Well, yeah, that's...
So how much do Buddhists know about sex?
Not
they're
all
celibate.
Okay, not all Buddhist monks are celibate. See, this is part of what the book is about.
Really, it's a myth, huh?
Yeah, well, it's not necessarily a myth. The original Buddhist monks were celibate, and there's still a lot of Buddhist orders in Asia that are celibate. People have repressive ideas about sexuality in spiritual circles because I think there is a long-standing Western tradition, and it also exists in the East as well, of separating body and mind. So saying that mind or spirit, you know, is pure, and this is what we need to be focusing on and working on, and saying the body is evil and base, and this is the thing we have to reject.
I don't know why people get offended when Brad talks about sex. I think people have weird ideas around sex, and I think everyone is entitled to their ideas.
How can you misuse sex? Be honestly, I'm curious about that. Like, how can you misuse it?
This is a good question, because I like your question, because I can tell just from the way, the smile on your face when you ask that you're coming from the different a completely different angle.
For some people, sex is uncomfortable.
There's a certain intimacy when you're sitting with people a lot, and you just start, I don't know, sitting with being horny.
People who are into Buddhism, they're generally people who are trying for some kind of purity. You know, they want to have this kind of state, they want to kind of live their life in a very, very moral fashion. You know, they're very concerned about this. So they're very interested in how to preserve their morality, and sex is an issue for a lot of people when it comes to morality. How do you use sex in a moral way? So a lot of them are coming from completely the opposite direction of your question. They're going, how can we not misuse sex? You know, they think that just to have sex is to misuse sex.
And whatever, you know, and it's more that I find out that, you know, it's more that I'm finding there's all this shit I put on Zen. It's not so much about sex. I expect Zen to be this lofty thing where I don't have to deal with these issues, you know, and it's that it points me to that, you know.
So sex is the sort of ultimate bodily thing. So to a person who is trying to be spiritual, sex seems like the most base thing that could possibly be engaged in, because it's very, very much body oriented. So there's a kind of repressive attitude that in order to free up the mind, we must deny the body. And I feel like that's not really the right way of approaching Buddhist practice.
So now you turn your cell phones off, and I want to also mention that this book is 10% off today, so after it's all over, I'll be selling the books. And the new book is called Sex, Sin, and Zen.
When I first got the idea of doing a book that was going to talk about what contemporary Buddhists thought and did about the problems of sex, contemporary Western Buddhists did and thought about the problems of sex, I expected to do my little online research and find out that there were already 20 books on the subject, and maybe just give up the whole idea when the idea first flashed in my mind to do this. And when I found out there weren't any, that was kind of surprised.
I think people who have issues with sex and Buddhism mixed together have their own issues that don't have anything to do with Brad. And they probably need to get laid.
Some people would consider sex to be a taboo issue, certainly within a Zen context, because he's not saying what they think he should be saying.
I think a lot of people as well who find themselves in spiritual circles may be in it for the wrong reasons, or I can't say that they're the wrong reasons, but very intense and interesting reasons, to put it a different way. And they tend to be a little bit uptight, and when this subject of sexuality comes up, I think maybe it makes them extremely uncomfortable.
Things are never black and white, are they? It's always kind of shades of grey.
One interesting thing that I have brought up at a lot of my lectures about the book that I enjoyed doing and enjoyed talking about was an interview I conducted with Nina Hartley, who is a porn star. You were married by Mel Weitzman, who's the abbot of Berkeley Zen Center, and part of the Buddhist wedding ceremony involves taking the 10 Buddhist precepts, and as you're aware, since you've taken them, the third Buddhist precept is do not misuse sexuality. So you're a porn star, you've been a porn star for 26 years. Do you feel you're upholding that?
I do. For me, misusing sexuality is to express your sexuality in a way that is harmful to self or others, that does not adhere to one's personal values, whatever those might be, your value system, or your belief system, or your faith system.
You've grown up around Zen. How does that figure into your sexuality, particularly in the work that you do?
I like sex as a Zen practice because the growth and the insight and the enlightenment comes when we consciously, deliberately reorient our relationship to pleasure.
Yeah.
On a deliberate and conscious fashion. And it can be done alone, solo. It doesn't even require a partner. It requires us being conscious and deliberate in what we're doing. We live in our bodies, and so anything that helps me become calm and comfortable in my body, zazen, sports, masturbation, sexual pleasure, can be an avenue to enlightenment. Anything that helps us inhabit ourselves with compassion and patience will increase the opportunity for moments of enlightenment to come and hit us over the head.
Nina Hartley is a woman who started in the mid-'80s doing porn films, and has made the transition from fresh young thing to middle.
Brad's discussions about sexuality in Zen, those are just that kind of talks that this world needs, because we are who we are. I mean, it really doesn't matter if we are gay or lesbians or if we like to fuck animals or washing machines or whatever. I mean, sexuality, that's so normal thing. And that's why it's so sad that sometimes in Zen Buddhism also some people are saying that you cannot be a Zen Buddhist and gay, or, I mean, that's what the fuck. So when Brad is like talking about sex and Zen, I mean, that's another issue that Zen Buddhism really needs.
Brad Warner, thank you so much for coming in. Check out hardcorezen.blogspot.com. Check out his column Hardcore Zen on suicidegirls.com. And it's been a pleasure. Everybody go out and buy Brad Warner's books. Thank you for coming on Suicide Girls Radio. And we'll see you next week. This has been Suicide Girls Radio on Indie 103.1.
Drop the aim on me! I'm ground zero, able hit on the wall, my shadow stick, secret scan, red flag, making sad, with your brain. In a click, to me now, in a click, to me now. Secret scan, red flag, making sad, with your brain. In a click, to me now, get up flat.
Here's one. Thanks for proving my point that you can't help but compare yourself to others constantly, in all capitals. I can tell you've never written a book before, and then he adds, because I have, which is not what I wrote. Very Zen. Why don't you write something positive or helpful for a change? With no question mark, because he's too angry to put a question mark in there.
I can't speak for whether he gets hurt. I know it bothers him. And again, I think the difference is with this practice, you get over it.
Brad's openness, to use a figure of speech, in his books, his personal life is an open book. On his blog, his personal life is frequently an open book. It makes him an easy target.
He's a human being. I think it's impossible to have that stuff just not hurt you, you know? And again, you know, anyone can pick up their laptop and write whatever they want, right? And to have to see that would be extremely hard for me.
The idea that someone would call Brad a prepubescent boy or say that he was stuck in adolescence is, it kind of makes me angry. I mean, I don't know that there's any value to a comment like that.
I think there is a part of him that is, you know, I don't know, adolescent. But I think that's part of his charm. I think that we could all learn a thing or two about that and stop taking ourselves so seriously.
Who's to say how someone should or shouldn't be, really?
If you're not harming anybody else in the process of being who you are, then fuck it.
I occasionally comment on Brad's blog, generally in the top 20 comments, and then after that it gets too confusing. And the people, occasionally there are people that comment that may be mentally ill or maybe just trolls, and I don't comment to them.
I think the people who make and say the negative comments on the blog, I think it says more about them as people than it does about Brad as a person or as a teacher. You know, people are quick to judge, and if they kind of read something that they don't agree with, then it automatically makes, you know, this guy an arsehole, or, you know, or something bad, or, you know, something that's against Zen Buddhism.
The point is that Brad is very sincere and he means so well, And his way of doing it sometimes intentionally incites people. He's like dynamite. And when you're playing with dynamite, some of it's going to blow back, and some of it is going to be causing casualties that you don't intend. But in the end, Brad is knocking down some walls with that dynamite that need to be knocked down.
I understand, and one of the good things about Brad is that Brad is he's a really fragile person. I mean, and he's not afraid to show it. Sometimes Brad is really like thinking too much about what other people are talking about him. Sometimes I really think that Brad, just shut the fuck up and just do what you have to do. Don't care about others. Have pussy if you want to have pussy. Don't care about other people's opinions.
Well, as a Zen teacher, you often have to do the opposite of what's expected of you, because once a student or somebody who's working with you on this sort of stuff, this sort of deep inquiry into what life is and what we all are, once they kind of get to the point where they think they've figured it out, you have to kind of divest them of that idea. So it's often it's often very important to do the opposite of what's expected.
I mean, that's an interesting question. What are Zen teachers supposed to be like? You know, having met Brad now. So before I'd met Brad, how was it? I think certainly they wouldn't expect them to write books like Zen, Sex and whatever it's called, or kind of even think about talking about sex in a way, in the same sentence as Zen. They would kind of, I would guess people would be a little bit taken aback with that. But I think, he just talks about, everyday stuff, which I think is really important.
It seems to me that there is some segment of the population that has a view of there are spiritual people and there are not spiritual people. And if you're a spiritual person, you're like this. And if you're not like that, then you're not a spiritual person, and you shouldn't say that you're a spiritual person or purport to be spiritual. From hanging out with Brad and reading his books, and from my own experience, I would disagree with that assessment. I think everyone is spiritual.
Usually people are wanting some kind of Zen gurus or masters or dudes with robes and enlightened auras and all kind of shit. But when Brad is just who he is, that's really annoying a lot of people, because people sometimes they cannot stand of like real people. They want to have someone, holy gurus and shit like that.
I don't really attempt to be controversial. I just say, I just kind of have maybe not as many filters as most people, but it's not, and the funny thing is, on the rare occasions when I do attempt to be controversial, what I write doesn't get any notice. So almost 100% of the time when something I say becomes a huge controversy, it's something that I did not imagine would be controversial. Whereas when I say things that I think are going to be controversial, nobody seems to care. So obviously I have no criteria.
If you just look at the core of like who someone is and what they're trying to portray, like I feel like Brad's a pretty authentic and honest person, and he's definitely not trying to harm anyone.
Brad says things that most of us really, knows, but people are too scared to say themselves.
I don't know if it's important or if it's part of the job of a Buddhist teacher to call out other teachers. Perhaps it's in case-by-case basis. You were asking about Brad doing that. And the aspects I'm familiar with, or the cases I'm familiar with, I think are when he's talking about people who are really perhaps teaching harmful things that are not really in line with the Buddha's teachings, or if there's some sexual scandals going on that people are pushing under the carpet. I think it's important for those to be brought to light. I think it's important for those to be talked about and acknowledged, very much so. But whether it's a teacher's calling or part of the job to do that, I don't know. I think, as I said, it's an important, perhaps a case-by-case basis, but important to reiterate the fact that all teachers are human beings and they're all fallible.
This is something I've talked about over and over, and the reason I talk about it over and over when I give talks about Zen is because it's something that has been and continues to be really hard for me to learn.
So why didn't you take a vow of celibacy?
Because that would have been too difficult.
Nobody else? So, are you denying the literal truth of reincarnation?
Well, I wouldn't say denying it. I think when people talk about reincarnation, you're getting into an area where you decide what life is.
You're clearly just a materialist. You're denying rebirth. And so the only conclusion that you could draw from that is that the mind is this epiphenomenon of brain activity, which is principally why knowledgeable Buddhists take issue with you.
I don't know which knowledgeable Buddhists, but I don't. That's not my position. Isn't materialistic.
You're not teaching Buddhism. You're teaching a worldly dharma that you and your teacher call Zen, but it's different.
It's another.
Well, so are you afraid of defending your position? Because take another text. Your teacher's translation of the Mula Madhyamaka Rika was a joke. I mean, they were it was like putting lipstick on a pig. And here you are just spreading your righteousness all over the internet for everyone to read and, I don't know, just worship you.
I mean, this. What am I going to say to that? You raised like 11 questions in one question, so it's difficult for me to know what to address. Maybe we could talk later about it.
How come you're not answering my question?
Well, you're raising a lot of topics, and it's difficult to know exactly which thread to.
Why? Just answer the question.
Well, I'm trying to answer the question. It's just you've asked several questions that are complicated, and I'm trying to give you the correct.
Why aren't you answering my question?
God damn it! I'm sick of
What are you doing? What is this, Brad? Some kind of upaya?
Fucking upaya. Your mom's a fucking upaya.
Oh, that's not childish. Bring my mom into it, Brad.
He does get angry, and he does get upset, and he does get sad, and he does get happy and, funny. And that is all part of our human experience. And I think that sort of ties back in very well to the fact that he is not what most people imagine a Zen master to look like or be.
When I was a teenager, I kind of borrowed my dad's 8mm Super 8 camera and made a bunch of weird little science fiction films with my friends. And I don't know, I'd always liked the movies, watching them and stuff, so making them was just a logical extension.
Brad writes songs and plays bass in bands and plays psychedelic guitar and likes to act in movies and write science fiction novels as part of some grand spiritual teaching. And he's not really into those things. He's just doing it as a sort of backdoor way of teaching Zen. And I don't believe that at all. I think he does those things because he likes doing them.
I think this documentary about Brad, people are really waiting for it because, I mean, Brad has a lot of fans all over the world, and a lot of people are anxious to see what is Brad doing and stuff. And I know that in Finland, this documentary is going to be a hit because Brad still has a lot of fans in here, and I mean, come on, Brad is a Brad. He is the Zen teacher of the modern age. He's the Batman in this Zen Buddhism, and I mean, who wouldn't want to see what he's doing?
So acting has always been something I liked, and I was in a bunch of the Tsuburaya productions, shows, little bit parts. So doing things like shoplifting from American Apparel and Zombie Bounty Hunter MD is just, I don't know, logical extension. I like doing it.
Do you really need me to wear this stupid thing? Because it's hot, it's sweaty, I look like an idiot.
Again, I think doing music and doing films and listening to rock and, all of that, they all go together in our real life, I don't think that Zen, sitting still and being quiet and getting grounded, is the opposite of that. I think they all go together. And I think that is part of what's so appealing to a lot of us, that there is that reality with him, the movies and the music and the rest of it.
The movie will play in your hometown, maybe.
Wouldn't you like to see more?
I make movies because it's fun.
Deborah.
With an O, is it? Not with the O?
D-E-B-R-A.
Oh, okay, that's a simple version. Okay, D-E-B-R-A.
I really liked what you were saying about sex.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because a lot of people kind of object. They get,
Yeah, no, I think it's so stupid how people that are religious vilify sex and porn. It's crazy.
I mean, it's the whole body is evil and spirit is elevated kind of thing. And I think that's not present in Buddhism, although a lot of people would like to kind of, stick it in there.
Exactly. I don't believe any of that. And neither do you, it seems like.
Not too much. Sometimes,
They'd make everything illegal if they could.
Yeah, I think so. Well, unless you're out here in California where everything's legal.
That's the way it should be.
Yeah, well, maybe so.
Well, thank you again so
I'm
much.
sorry I didn't even give the book back.
I'll see you soon.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much for today. Thank you.
Thank you. You asked some good questions.
Oh, thank
That's
you.
good. I mean, it helps to get the easy questions.
Yeah, I needed to know. I really did. I had no idea. So thank you.
I appreciate
so much.
it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, if you're chasing after fame and money, that's a problem. But there are sometimes when you just do something, and because you've done that thing, then you start to become famous, and that's not a problem. Well, it can become a problem of its own, but it's not a Zen problem.
So basically, when you're chasing it, it's bad, but when it just happens because it ends up being what reality is, then there's no problem.
I mean, you can see that easily.
I don't think that Brad wanted to be famous. I think that Brad struggles to deal with the fact that he's famous on a daily basis. I think that I think Brad wants people to. Brad wants people to read his books. He wants people to get something out of what he's teaching. But all the other nonsense that goes along with fame, he's not terribly interested in. And I think that his life would probably be a lot easier. I think that in a way, Brad would be a lot happier if he didn't have to deal with all the dark side of fame, I guess.
Well, what about the whole thing about the need to make money and things like that, where
Well,
you sort of
yeah.
have to
Yeah,
get
you
more
have to.
popular to make more money, you know?
Well, that's the problem I'm facing of trying to make a living as a writer and getting paltry royalty checks from my publishers, and you know, trying to figure out how to make that into something I can pay rent with.
Right.
You know, he's not a rich guy walking around with tons of money. Like, he's just this Zen Buddhist teacher and lives very, very modestly. We're trying to get him a Kickstarter to get an iPhone.
Brad, the truth is Brad needs to keep the lights on, right? Buddhist teacher is not just out of hand a terribly lucrative profession.
I try to, as much as possible, separate the two. I'm trying to not do the Zen thing to make money. It's always my goal. But at the same time, I'm writing about the Zen stuff I do, and that writing is something I feel no qualms about charging for.
Ah, I get it. So
because it's work.
basically, the writing is the money-making thing, whereas doing Zen, sitting, doing the practice, that's
teaching and things
that's
like that.
Zen. That's completely different category.
Yeah, and they overlap. They overlap considerably, and I'm aware that there's this huge, massive gray area where these things are intertwined.
So you end up having to keep 5 or 6 balls in the air. I have to go on my speaking tours. I have to write my books. I have to keep my blog going. I have to keep my profile raised. So, yeah, I think if you want to make a living doing this, you have to, you know, particularly if fame is kind of handed to you, you sort of have to make the most of it.
So people are used to getting things very, very quickly, and we've become a little soft, I think, because we want to get everything right away. So people, when they approach Zen practice, they think Zen practice ought to come right away. You know, and this leads to that kind of, you know, some of the kind of scam things that are going on right these days, where people are promising you an enlightenment experience in a couple of hours, or these kind of things. You know, there really are people out there selling products that are supposed to do it, you know, right away, right now, so you can get on with the rest of your life or something.
I am Genpo Roshi. You are not Genpo Roshi. I am Genpo Roshi. No, you are not. You are Sock Monkey. You live in my room and you make critical comments about me, and you're just a general troublemaker. I am not Sock Monkey. I am Genpo Roshi. I am the author of The Big Mind Process, a revolutionary process which is the natural evolution of gaining deep insights into Zen practice.
Sure, I'd like to get enlightened, but who's got the time?
You've tried mantras, you've tried crystals. With regular meditation programs, it can take you weeks or even months to reach complete, unsurpassed, perfect enlightenment. Now, you can put an end to the unpleasantness of being unenlightened with the Enlightenizer. In the past, it took the great masters a lifetime to get enlightened. But today, the Enlightenizer gets you a true Satori experience in minutes with none of the stress and strain. Be the first in your Zendo or ashram to reach nirvana. Let the Enlightenizer bring you to spiritual awareness while you drive, while you work, while you operate heavy machinery, while you skydive, even while you watch TV. The Enlightenizer gets you enlightened fast so you can get on with your life.
The Enlightenizer should not be used while driving, working, operating heavy machinery, skydiving, or watching television. Side effects may include nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, brain tumors, dropsy, scurvy, bubonic plague, night tremors, insanity, death, and anal leakage. Consult your physician before using the Enlightenizer while pregnant, nursing, ovulating, masturbating, digesting food, or breathing. The Enlightenizer should not be used by anyone over, under, or just at 16 years of age. If enlightenment experience persists more than 4 hours, seek emergency room treatment.
Are you enlightened?
I don't think Brad would say that Brad is enlightened. It's hard for me to say. It's hard for me to say whether or not Brad is enlightened. I don't know. I don't know.
Brad is not enlightened.
I don't know that I know what enlightened means. I'm not enlightened, so I'm not certain that I'm an authority on the subject.
Brad enlightened? Sure. And I think that people use that word enlighten, enlightenment as a finishing line thing, where you're like, here I am, I'm enlightened, all done.
For people to think that he's like a saint or saintly or, you know, not your
A normal person
is strange.
I don't really understand that.
I don't
He
really
seems
get it
pretty
either.
normal to me.
I mean, he just, you know.
I mean, he's kind of weird, but
he studied some
he's
stuff.
Brad.
Wrote some books.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's like enlightened or anything. I don't think he's,
No.
you know, I mean, I don't know that anybody or many people are.
I mean,
Yeah.
he drives a PT Cruiser.
I think students are attracted to the idea of enlightenment because they perhaps have a ill-conceived notion of what it is. When people come to meditation for the first time, when I teach the intro classes, I ask people what they're here for, and most, or a lot of the time, the answer is they're seeking bliss or nirvana without a clear understanding of what that is.
The question, are you enlightened, is one of those things that a lot of people want to know the answer to, and a lot of people don't even want to ask that question, or they make a kind of assumption about it, or they make a lot of assumptions about what that might mean, and there are a lot of people out there who make it their whole thing to kind of present themselves as an enlightened person, and then whatever spews out of their mouth must be the words of enlightenment. But if you continue this kind of Zen practice long enough, just about anybody who practices it for long enough, and I mean decades long, will at some point start to have kind of epiphanies and revelations and period, you know, moments of what seem to be deep understanding. And there comes a time in almost every practitioner's life where there's a moment when a lot of questions are answered all at once in a kind of a big, you know, thing, and it forms a kind of a big break in your life when this happens. And whether or not that makes you, that having had something like that happen in your life makes you a perfected human being or a perfected being or some kind of ultimate angelic creature or not is the question. I don't think it does. It still leaves you being exactly as human as you were before.
Brad is a normal guy. Brad is a normal guy because, well, he is a normal guy. I mean, he loves to do what he loves dinosaurs, he loves Zen, he loves Zazen, he loves girls, he loves to do what he's doing. That's normal. And he hates Zen robes. That's really normal.
I think I'm a normal person. I think normal is a funny thing. I think I'm average. I don't think I'm extraordinary in any way, which is why it sort of frustrates me to see how certain things go in the Zen world.
Brad Warner is very much a human being, and that means being able to be honest and to make mistakes and to be real.
The thing is, a lot of times when you're talking about meditation, people think that it takes a sort of extraordinary person to do it. And I don't think it takes an extraordinary person.
People like Brad try to show that we have human emotions. We are not robots. We are not these perfect Buddhas who are beyond this world, beyond all desire and human emotion.
I've had a chance to hang out with Brad. It's been kind of really refreshing also because Brad is just Brad, and that's why I think he's a really good teacher to people.
He's a great friend. I really appreciate his exposing me to this, to Zen.
Brad is real. Brad is not interested in anything but, you know, what is true, I guess.
I have delved into this meditation thing for several decades and been kind of serious about it, even though people, you know, I don't come across as a real, I don't know, people don't think I'm serious. I don't know why, because I am. So I've had this experience and I've gone through it, and I've arguably seen something that I think is valuable to people. But I think what makes it valuable is the fact that I am not extraordinary. If I can penetrate into things to that level, then anybody can.
The fact that he's genuine, the fact that he talks about real things, real issues, relevant issues, not, talking about to practice Zen, you've got to be this or that. You just got to be a real person.
Brad Warner is very much a human being. When I see a teacher who is very much a human being, it makes it that much easier for me to be a human being and also say, hey, if, this could work for me too.
He's a little bit of a one-off because there's no one really like him out there, which is, not that it's a shame, but you wish there were more people kind of being that kind of candid, real, honest, genuine, all these kind of words we keep repeating.
I think that Brad will be a lot more appreciated after he's left this world, visible world. I think Brad will be a lot more appreciated after he's dead. Because like many great artists, some people get it and some people don't.
This world really needs Brad's kind of, outlook, because, Brad is just an average guy. He's not a superhuman, and he's not an enlightened, Zen asshole or whatever. He's just a regular, normal guy, and this world really needs that kind of attitude. Brad's just a normal asshole, and that's why I really love him.